Hello and welcome to GM Tips, the show where my friends and I share with you our thoughts and suggestions on how to game master your role-playing game. I'm your host, Satine Phoenix, co-creator of Maze Arcana and a dungeon master for D&D. Today's theme is Wonderment. There's a sense of wonder at the beginning of every tabletop game. You give your characters life by creating stats and backstories. They have brothers and mothers, ex-girlfriends or lost pets. They have experiences before you even give them XP. You visualize the entirety of who they are, then bring them to the table entrusting the future of your character to both the game master and the other players. Bright and shiny and new like a wee baby child, the future unfolds one critical hit or fail at a time. The Game Master gathers the party, a collection of these new lives, and guides them through adventure after adventure at the table, and you all play, excited about the possibilities of what kind of hijinks you might get yourselves into. Tabletop role-playing games are one of the only forms of story that nurtures that childlike openness. That and maybe children's books. But how do you keep that sense of wonder in your players who've been playing for years? Your hardcore players will read all the books, and when you start to describe a monster, before you even finish the description, they already know what it is and all of its stats and features. How do you keep them from metagaming? How do you get the experienced player who has played in the lands through all the various editions and knows every version of the lore to retain that wonderment? I could roll on, but instead, let's discuss this with the founder of GaryCon, son of Gygax and brother of many other Gygaxes, Luke Gygax.
Hi Satine, how are you?
I'm great, thank you for coming.
Well, thanks for having me on, I appreciate it.
So the theme of today's show is Wonderment.
Yes.
And I was curious, it's about playing for long periods of time and keeping that. How long have you been playing?
Well, I've been playing for a long time. I'm 46 years old now, and my dad started me rolling dice when I was 4 years old.
Nice. So when did you start Dungeon Master? Like 5?
No, you know what, probably at 8 years old, I started dungeon mastering for my older sisters, and they used to bully me a lot and kill the monsters more easily and get bigger treasure because they'd be like, that's it? That's all that's there? And I'd be like, well, okay, maybe there's some more stuff.
Oh, that's really cute. So you started as a kid dungeon mastering. That's actually really cool. As you got older, because you were a kid and you had that sense of wonderment, did you over time kind of hold on to that? Is D&D to you kind of like that childhood thing that you hold on to, or is it just something that's evolved and is part of your play rhythm?
Well, I definitely think it's evolved, and some of the newness and the wonderment can fade if you're not careful. And so that's why I wanted to talk about that today, is just different ways that you can keep that sense where your players are characters in a preternatural realm, exploring, and they're there to adventure. It's not just 9 to 5, I'm punching in as an adventurer and hitting, seeing some monsters and punching out. This is something that should be really unique, rare, and exciting things for them to do, and scary.
So when in your life did you decide to tap into that and then roll with the wonderment thing?
Well, I think that it just comes naturally over time because, as I said, I've been playing for, over 40 years now. And some of the people that I play with are very skilled, long-term gamers and designers. So my father always stressed, throw new things in there, don't make it predictable. And that was the sense of challenge. And I remember you were speaking about the various types of dungeon mastering styles that you have. And I would definitely say that I am a dungeon master who likes to challenge the players. And I've been accused and called even maybe not so nice names for some of the things that I do, but it keeps them on their toes. And I think it keeps it more exciting in the adventure if you struggle to get where you're going.
Is it because of your military background that you kind of like to push people, or you have that? Just curious.
Nope, I would say it's because of my father and the way that he dungeon mastered. It was very, obviously, old school style, and nothing ever came easy. And it was not a high-powered magical environment. I remember just one time I was facing, actually the Lost Caverns of Sajkanth. I was playtesting that with my father, and I was playing a character called Melf, who was my main character at that time. And I was solo, and I came up against a Gorgamira, which has 3 heads. Melf, yes. Melf was my character.
Okay, continue. That's exciting.
Yeah. And so this Gorgamira was in this cavern, and I'm fighting it, and we're going back and forth. And the Gorgamira breathed, the red dragon had breathed on me. I failed my saving throw. Well, in my father's, the way he played it, if you fail your saving throw for a breath weapon or area of effect, something like that, all of your items have to save. So I had to go down my character sheet and save every single item. I think I lost a potion and maybe a scroll, you know, and but the most prized possession, one of the most prized possessions I had was my displacer cloak. That was so hard to find. I found that in adventuring in Greyhawk. That's another story. But so this you know, it fell to ashes on the floor. And I decided right there, it's me or this Gorgamira. That's it, I'm fighting to death. So I was down to 8 hit points, going back and forth for about 6 or 7 rounds, swinging back and forth. I was missing, it was missing. Finally, I took it out and killed it. But in the Lost Caverns of Sajkant, if you haven't played, you have to get to the center chamber like several different times. You keep getting teleported randomly around until you hit all of the doors, and then it'll open up to the vault in the center. Well, when you're getting teleported around, you don't know where you are on the map necessarily. So I'd be wandering around, and my dad would be like 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, passage turns east, opens up into a cavern with a skeleton of a dead Gorgamira, a pile of ashes, and elven tears. And I was like, oh, all right, I know where I'm at now. So it was just one of those things. But that was it. You had to struggle, and things got used up. It took your hard-earned gold and gems and treasure and time to research spells and to train your character. So you were always striving. There was a reason why you were delving and adventuring. It was to gain power and gain experience, and you needed those resources or else you couldn't do it.
But that challenge is exciting. It keeps you wanting to play and get you actually more involved versus if you're just really badass and then you go in and fight the thing and we keep winning.
And you just destroy it and smash it, and you have millions and millions of gold pieces and a huge castle and tons of minions, and then you can retire and start a new character and start the struggle again, because isn't that what it's about?
Yeah, totally. Keep the struggle alive. Yeah. So, the red dragon.
Yes.
You're going after it. Eventually you defeat it.
Yes.
Different character comes in, meets a red dragon. All of a sudden you know how to beat this dragon.
Yes.
But as a game master, how do you design the monsters or the encounters or whatever so that your players aren't metagaming that?
Sure, and that's definitely something that I think helps you keep your sense of wonder if you can change a few things. So obviously, the way to keep a sense of wonder is always present new monsters that they don't know. Well, that gets kind of hard though, right? There's only so much that we can do as game masters, and we don't have a lot of time. So I'd say the second way you could do it is simply to alter their appearance. And that would be, you could take a standard, a black pudding. I took a black pudding I created the world of Okarim, which is a Middle Eastern style area with almost like a post-apocalyptic desert lands there. It's very challenging. So I just took a black pudding, I changed its appearance and called it something else, but it's essentially black pudding. So they see this gray, slimy thing that's cruising around. They don't know that it's, oh, hey, electrical and cold isn't going to work. We need to, and weapons, we should use fire and magical attacks to defeat it. Well, they don't know that. So that keeps them guessing a little bit. So that's just one simple way, is just change their outward appearance. That's very simple, not complicated. A third way to keep it fresh would be to alter their abilities. So it may look like something that you would expect, but you give it a power or an effect that you wouldn't normally think that it would have. One thing that jumps to mind is the Lost City of Gaxmore. My father was playtesting with my brother, and I wrote it a number of years ago, and my father was playtesting it. And there was an ogre I'd put in there who was leading a group of goblins in the city. There's many different factions. And they encountered him. It was Jobu One Eye. And they're thinking, okay, no big deal. It's just an ogre. Well, I had given him, it was written in 3rd edition, I had given him some magical tattoos. So he had bull strength and the ability to breathe acid like twice a day, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's also very strong.
it was. So, well, I'm a challenging GM sometimes. So, he approached, he was playing a fighter. My father was playing Tempros Grangers, I remember. And he was approaching to close for combat. And of course, I breathed acid breath on him and then used the bull strength. And it was very, very close fight. And at the end, they prevailed. And at the end, he was like, all right, he's like searching the ogre, trying to figure out what item gave him these powers. And I was like, well, no, you notice there's a black dragon tattoo on his chest or whatever. He's like, are you telling me there's no item here? This is just a natural ability? And I was like, yep. He's like, that's bogus. I can't believe what a chintzy DM you are. I was like, yes!
So you actually game at your convention. You're Dungeon Master at your convention.
Yes, I do.
So do you get players who are like, that's not in the book, that's not how it's supposed to be, and like stuff like that?
There's rules lawyers out there all the time. And I think if you set the if you set at a convention, it could be a little bit harder simply because you don't know the folks that you're playing with. But you can set those conditions for a successful game and for good gameplay at the beginning. If you say, here's kind of what my understanding is.
Yeah.
If you have a question, we can address it. But if it's going to take more time, I'll make the final ruling. I'm the dungeon master, and let's just go on and keep the story going. Cool. I think that's important to do too. There was a couple more ways I was thinking besides changing their abilities is changing the behavior of a creature. So a really good example of this in my mind, and kind of taps into my military experience a little bit, is I was writing a Cave of Wisdom for Gary Con, and I was collaborating with Jim Ward and Frank Menser and Tim Kask and Chris Clark and myself. We all got together, and it's essentially a one-shot adventure that you could run at a convention very easily. And you're walking along, and boom, however you find the Cave of Wisdom, you find it. And there's a chest in the center that needs some keys to unlock. Well, then there's all these gates you go through, and at the end of each encounter, you get one of the keys to open it up. So for my encounter, I had this mid-level. It's made for characters probably 5th to 7th level Dungeons and Dragons, mid-level power. I had them encounter kobolds. And you think, kobolds? That's the main enemy? Well, yeah, it was. And so they came in through this gateway, and they're at a roadway next to a small hill, which turns out to be a barrow. But these kobolds are set up in an L-shaped ambush on this road. So the party, if they walk down the road, they wait for them to go past a little bit. They pop up from like spider holes, throw javelins, and get flank shots on them, flank or rear shots. And then they throw two rounds of javelins, and they charge into close. And normally that would take out most merchants or even with caravan guards.
Yeah.
So of course, a mid-level adventure, they're going to take out these kobolds. And they're just like, oh yeah. And so these kobolds may get a hit or two, but they're going to take them out. So they're lulled into a false sense of security. But these kobolds are playing smart, right? So it should be a hint to them. And they go to the barrow, and there's obviously a way to crawl in. Kobolds are small, so you can crawl in pretty easily. Maybe if you're a dwarf or something, you could maybe crouch. But it goes in and it turns 90 degrees, and it goes further and it narrows. So you have to kind of crawl in there, and it's hard to maneuver. Well, what do these kobolds have? They have made a grate at the end, and they have a heavy crossbow train down there.
Jerks!
Right, oil and torches. So you can't miss. I don't care what your armor class is, 7th level fighter. If you're in this tunnel, they can hit you with oil and throw torches on you and shoot right down there. And so that presented more of a challenge for players. So they are clever and they use tactics. And that's maybe not how most of the time they're employed. They're employed as vast armies of just for you to like wade through and destroy. So that's 4 different ways that you can keep your sense of wonderment and kind of keep things fresh.
Make the bad guys clever.
Yeah, make the bad
Players
guys clever.
hate that.
I do, and I always got, there's several stories I could tell about challenging times. My dad was pretty clever, but he played with a lot of crafty players as well. So that's kind of how I came up. But a 5th way that occurred to me more so after my last deployment to Iraq. We were in southern Iraq, and it's very hot there. I mean, you're standing outside, and you're looking at it's 129 degrees. You're wearing body armor. It's not comfortable. So I thought, wow, you know what? We have adventurers walking around in plate armor, carrying their rucksacks full of equipment, laden down, going like it's nothing.
But it's heavy. That's super heavy.
Right. So I'm like thinking, well, wouldn't it be interesting? And so I was writing the Blighted Lands. I created the world program for the Blighted Lands that I used in GaryCon for the tournament there, an AD&D tournament. And so I thought, well, this really sucked to be in 120 plus degrees, wearing body armor, just sweating.
It sucked. I'm definitely putting it in
I'm going to make these guys suffer. So I included that as gameplay, as part of the gameplay for lower level characters. Now certainly you can, it's like I said, it's a preternatural world. It's a fantastic world. There's magic. You can create food and water and those things. But if you haven't considered that, and they're new, the ideas they came across, they weren't acclimated. So just like as an American, I went to the Middle East and faced that desert terrain. I wasn't necessarily acclimated at first. Neither are they. So they rapidly get into this adventure where they have to go across the terrain, and it goes from a coastal area into the Blighted Lands itself, where it's super hot, like 140, 150 degrees.
Oh my God.
And they have to figure out, hey, if they wear their metal armor or go in the middle of the day, it's going to impact their constitution. They're going to have increased water requirements, or else they can't heal properly. It'll affect their ability to rest and regain spells and things like that.
So how do your players respond to that? Because they usually, when you go and play a D&D game, you're like, okay, I expect X, Y, and Z.
Right.
But this is really hard. It sounds way harder. Like it sounds more complicated and not what you would expect. How
Right.
do you deal with their reaction?
Well, I think it's just another problem. It's a puzzle that you've put in front of people, and I think gamers like those puzzles. So if you constantly threw environmental challenges at them, well, that would get old. If you constantly threw word puzzles at them, or that would get old. But if you mix it up and you throw various things in there, it keeps it fresh. What's coming at me next? How do I prepare? What are these creatures going to look like? I think that keeps it fresh and exciting.
So you've been gaming with your dad for a long time, and all of his friends. You just listed like the old guard of tabletop gaming. You learned from your dad. Do you find that it was beneficial to learn from all of them as well and make stories with those people?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, it was very normal for me because those were just the guys who came. That was my gaming group. I mean, it was just Jim or whoever came over, or Frank. It wasn't like, oh my God, this is the old guard. It was just, they're kind of like uncles.
For us on the outside, it's
Right.
like, wow.
But actually, it was pretty natural, and I would run, I think I ran an old game called Paranoia for them back in the 80s as a young player. I was in high school, and I'd run that for them, and that was fun. That was like the change-up if we were between GMs or someone needed a break, and that was fun. I really enjoyed it. But then later, as I got out and gamed with other people, people had this like impression that I had some sort of supernatural GMing abilities, or that, oh my gosh, you're going to run this, you must know everything. And that's not the case.
You just went to really, really good game master school.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe I had the opportunity to play with and game with some great people, and so I got some good tips. But there's no genetic marker for being a good GM. So just like the rest of you out there, I had to learn too, and it's okay. Sometimes I make mistakes or fudge the rules or something like that as well.
So, there have been some questions posed to me from other people, and I would like to ask them to you before I ask you the final 3 questions.
Okay.
So Rudy has a question. He couldn't make it today. The question is there anything in D&D, monster or item or location that's named after you or any of your siblings?
Yes. Next question. Oh, wait, you wanted me to answer it? Oh, okay. Yes, as I mentioned, Melf was one of my characters, right? So
I have a terrible poker face. I'm sorry.
So I made up Melf's Minute Meteors, as well as Melf's Acid Arrow, and those are really through gameplay things that I made up. And the fireballs, 30 by 30 by 30 football. Well, of course, in Greyhawk, even a room that was 30 by 30, the roof wasn't 30 feet high. So I had to learn the hard way. When you throw a fireball into those rooms, there's backblast. So I said, boy, I'd really like the same sort of effects, but maybe I could make them in smaller fireballs.
Tiny.
With tinier fireballs still do damage. And Melf's Acid Arrow, I thought, well, I'm a fighter magic user. It'd be really neat for me to shoot, to get, use my ranged weapon to attack the enemy spellcaster. Then he's taking acid damage, so he can't cast, right?
So cool.
And then I can close with him, kill his little guards in front of him, and get him before he can use spells on me.
Thank you for that.
Yes, you're
because
welcome.
that's pretty awesome.
And then the world of Greyhawk, there's tons of little Easter eggs in there. So there's the Duchy of Ernst is my brother Ernie. Principality of Ulek is Luke. Sundi is my sister Cindy. Heidi is Heidi, and Alyssa is Elisa. Those are my brothers and sisters.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's really sweet. We can ask so many.
Okay, wait, real fast. What is your favorite contribution that you think that you made to Dungeons and Dragons?
My favorite contribution that I made to Dungeons and Dragons, well, I really like the spells that I did, but probably not so well known is when I was a kid, I had an idea for a monster that my dad put in the Fiend Folio called the Bullywugs, and then it was later in the D&D cartoon.
Oh, that's so cool!
That's so cool.
That's pretty cool.
Okay, you're so cool.
Okay, are you ready for the last 3 questions?
Sure.
What is your pre-game house rule?
All right, so I'm pretty rules light, and I like to keep it fun and get everybody involved. So I try to stay pretty light on the rules. And I typically run AD&D just because that's what I grew up playing, and that's where my comfort zone is. So I just say I use a D10 for initiative, and that represents each segment in a round. Low is better. A natural 20 always hits. A 1 always misses. And if you have a question on a ruling that I made, it's okay to go ahead and bring it up. And if we can get it solved pretty quickly, no problem. Otherwise, I'll make a call, and let's just go forward with the story and not get hung up on it.
Because the story is what's important, the movement, and not getting stagnant.
Exactly.
Got it. What is your favorite GM moment?
Oh, my favorite GM moment. I tell you what, there's been a whole lot of them, and especially playing, just some great times with Jim Ward TPKing us, or things like that. But GMing, I think a story that comes to mind is I wrote an adventure called The Tower of Akbaba with Jim Ward, and we used it as a GaryCon tournament. Well, I was running this at another convention afterwards, and the party had made it in to the final encounter with Sereth, an ancient red dragon, an ancient worm. And it's in this vast cavern, and there's a prisoner there they're supposed to free. And so the party along the way, they had an opportunity to get a bunch of weapons and magic items to help them defeat this very powerful red dragon. They didn't go and get all of them, they just had a few, so it was going to be challenging. So they get up there and they're fighting the red dragon. The breath weapon eventually kills the spellcasters in the back. The fighters have closed up there and they get clawed and smashed and squished. And all that's left is a halfling thief picking the locks, trying to pick these magical locks that he can't pick, there's no hope for it, to free the prisoner. And the red dragon turns his, gaze at him, and he runs over to the body of the magic user, and he pulls like this dragon, this ring that shoots bolts that are especially effective against dragons. And he uses it, and he rolls a natural 20 to hit.
Oh, nice.
And he does double damage. I give him double damage, and he actually kills the dragon, and he's the last one, and he made it. So that was like, and everyone was like, yay! And so
this little guy, everybody's dead, just like.
I did it. So he scooped up all the bodies, and they escaped, and he lived. So
oh, lovely.
I thought that was good. So it was a heroic ending.
Yeah. Quick tip to the audience.
Well, quick GM tip, I sort of alluded to it earlier. It's okay as a GM to find your own style. I think that's what you need to do. Don't try to imitate somebody else. Take the time, experiment. If it doesn't work out exactly perfectly, it's all right. There's no genetic marker. There's nothing in your DNA that makes you a good GM. I know that from experience. People make assumptions that I'm going to know everything about the rules, and I don't, or that I will know the answer or the perfect way to handle it. I learn just like everybody else, and sometimes I do a better job than other times. So just relax, have fun. It's a game, and we're all here to enjoy ourselves.
That's the end of our show. Thank you so much for coming out. Where can we find you on the internet?
If you go to GaryCon.com, you can find out more about our convention. This year it'll be held March 8th to 11th in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. I hope you guys can make it.
It's my favorite. I'm not even going to lie. And I know I go to like 10 different conventions through the year, but this is my absolute favorite convention. You go and it's all about Dungeons and Dragons. Well, it's about tabletop games, and I love it. You should go. Or yeah, okay.
It's about gaming with a capital G.
That's right. I like that. As always, I'm Satine Phoenix at Satine Phoenix. You can ask me GM tip questions at #AskSatine. Watch Dread on ProjectAlpha.com. Pick up and play one of my Guild Add-up supplements for the Tomb of Annihilation at DMsGuild.com. Catch me live every Sunday at noon on Mazarkana's Orphan Echo on twitch.tv/Mazarkana, and every Tuesday night Dungeon Mastering on twitch.tv/DND. Thank you for watching us here on Geek and Sundry, and see you next time. Luke, please GM us out of here.
You got it, Satine. Here we go. After hours of arduous exploration, your party has located a cavern mouth that must be the one you seek. Cautiously, you proceed into the shadowy recesses of the cave, igniting torches and uncovering magical sources of illumination as you delve deeper beyond where the sun's rays penetrate. The cave narrows into a tube-like tunnel approximately 25 feet in diameter and turns eastward. You press forward into the Stygian gloom, descending down the sloping tunnel, your footfalls sounding loud in the eerie silence. 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. You move down the passage, ducking below low-hanging stalactites and traversing around clusters of stalagmites. Keeping mental note of your pace count, you travel almost 1,000 feet down the tunnel before it opens into a vast natural cavern. The oddly smooth floor of the cavern slopes sharply towards the edge of a huge underground lake, whose waters lap at the edge of the shoreline. A noise high above and slightly behind you snaps the silence and draws your attention towards the roof of the cavern. You quickly identify the noise as nothing more than a colony of bats disturbed by your light. As you return your attention to the lake, you notice the water swelling and causing increasingly large waves to splash on the rocky floor. The source of this turmoil is readily apparent. Bursting forth from the brackish waters, a thick, black, and scaly neck, terminating in a huge dragon's head. Its baleful yellow eyes are fixed on you, and its dripping jaws are wide open as if to prepare to expel a breath. roll for initiative.